From millions of copies sold in the 90s to now less than 1,000 active players across the whole genre. Everyone used to know these fast-paced, futuristic, anti-gravity racing games. AGRs defined the genre and set new standards, but now they're almost completely forgotten. What happened? Well, I spent 400 hours on nearly every game in this subgenre and hope to give you the answer by the end of this video series, which covers the inception, the golden age, and eventual decline. My goal is to simply share my experience through this journey, so let's begin. If you're rich enough, you could consider a career in motorsports. At first, you'll have to start from slow Mario Karts and work your way through faster and faster cars, and at the very top, you'll reach Formula 1, the pinnacle of motorsport. But what if we take F1 a step further? We get F0, the Grand Prix of the future. A world where rockets take over combustion engines with magnetic levitation replacing wheels. And we did this to save memory. It was 1990 after all, a time where 3D games were slow and required expensive hardware. F0 on the other hand, ran and looked better than anything else on an affordable console, but in reality, it wasn't 3D. The track is a moving and rotating 2D image, and the ships are simple 2D sprites. Combined, they created 3D graphics at home. In fact, they opted for ships instead of race cars just because animating wheels would have taken too much space. With those limitations and the premise in mind, it's time to get into the final product and pick between one of the 4 ships. A choice accompanied by a full-on acceleration graph, something that modern games replace with a simple bar or number. The game features 3 Grand Prix, each containing 5 tracks. They're all flat, and there are only so many variations of a circle you can possibly draw on a piece of paper. So to shake things up, the game introduces different types of obstacles with each track. The first one is wide and easy, with dirt patches on the side slowing you down and a jump pad trying its best to add verticality. The second one introduces ice patches, requiring careful steering in order to maintain grip, a concept that a few modern games, even ones made by the same company, still struggle with. The third track introduces sharp corners, requiring you to actually slow down. The fourth one is the most boring circle you can possibly draw on a paper, but at least there's this boost pad that makes you go really fast, and the wind constantly pulls your ship to one direction throughout the whole race. To counter it, you'll have to strafe, which gives you a horizontal push that's separate from the conventional steering. It's also quite useful for taking sharp turns in the Grand Prix's final track, where you get introduced to mines. Hitting them kills your momentum and drains your energy, which you can regain by going over the pit lane present in every track. All races consist of 5 laps against God knows how many opponents. No matter your position, the game throws racers at you until you disqualify, and you have to finish in top 3, which completely defeats the point of a Grand Prix. Even out in front, you'll have to adjust your racing lines to overtake traffic cars. A great way to add challenge and variety to the otherwise 5 copy-paste laps, but also introducing an element of luck and frustration. With today's sponsor, however, you can obliterate anyone who gets in your way. Asphalt Legends Unite is a racing game that wouldn't look out of place in this video series. Defy gravity and laws of physics with 6 drifts, jumps, spins, and 3 levels of nitro boost. There are hundreds of amazingly detailed cars to choose from here, like this Porsche Carrera GT that is on sale right now. Pick your ride, customize it to your liking, and race them on dozens of distinct locations, each with their own unique look and stunning visuals. I really like the diverging paths on each track, letting you pick your own route and later merge with other racers. Asphalt is free on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, Steam Deck, Android, and iOS with full cross-platform support. This means you can play with any of your friends online and carry your progress to any device you want. There are a lot of Black Friday offers going on at the moment, including some for new players, so be sure to download Asphalt Legends Unite using the link in description. It's free on all platforms and you don't want to miss out on the deals. But anyways, let's conclude this Grand Prix and try the fastest ship, which is also the heaviest and the least likely to slide, with the only downside being the acceleration, which is incredibly slow in this game. To help with that, you'll get 1 speed boost per lap that forces your ship to a certain speed for a few seconds. The handling is primitive yet solid, with most of the fundamentals you'd expect from a 3D racing game. The remaining 10 tracks take all the concepts and obstacles, mix them up, and present them in a more challenging way. The final track is also the most iconic and demanding one, featuring the sharpest corners and tightest roads with some mines and magnets thrown in the mix. This game took full advantage of the system it was on and went further by adding a comic story in the manual. It's a Grand Prix game though. What, are you gonna add cringe F1 drama?
Honestly, what are we doing? Racing or ping pong?
That's exactly what this game can turn into when you hit something. You can get a speed boost if you get hit directly from behind. Otherwise, prepare to turn into a tennis ball and restart the whole Grand Prix. Because of course it's an old game and tries to artificially extend its playtime by making you repeat the same thing. They left half the tracks out of the practice mode on purpose to ensure you get cucked at the final track. Thankfully, you can return the favor by wall bouncing your way to victory. The worst aspects of this game can now be mitigated by using save states on emulators, which makes this game worth playing even today. Despite the limitations, F-Zero offered more variety than some modern racing games today, so it's safe to say that it was an instant hit back then. This success led to a sequel. It was cancelled. They ended up releasing it on a satellite download thingy anyways, with BS F-Zero, featuring 4 new ships and 5 tracks, and another 5 later on that was lost to time, with only an old VHS recording left. But remember, the tracks are 2D images, and with some help from AI, the F-Zero community accurately recreated them all. These were welcome additions, but they clearly weren't as well thought out as the original game. Most importantly, this wasn't a new game. But why? F-Zero sold more than enough copies to warrant a sequel, but there was another racing game that sold even more. It's fucking Mario Kart. Imagine going from this to this. The music alone gives you brain damage. Literally, Nick was playing Mario Kart for 8 hours, unable to beat it, until he decided to mute the game and play some of his own tunes. And just like that, he beat the game. Wow, we should recreate that somehow. And that's how Wipeout was born. True story, by the way. The banana peels were replaced with explosive mines, the kid-friendly music was replaced with kick-ass techno, and most importantly, slow karts were replaced with ultra-fast ships. Or were they? Wipeout came out in '95, starting the 3D generation of games. It looks straightforward from the start. You got 4 ships, 6 tracks, and 2 speed classes, one of which is locked. So you'll go with the Venom class and... the game's slow? It's actually really easy, and the Rapier class isn't much of a challenge either. In fact, it's quite boring. Or is it? I played Wipeout through an unofficial remaster mod that I thought would only be a graphics upscale, but it made one small change that ruined the whole game. It removed most of the speed penalty when hitting walls. Thankfully that was only the default option and you could still revert it back to the original. And here's how that turned out. Even the smallest wall scrape can bring you to a dead stop, and that is a great thing. I finally had a reason to avoid walls and keep the ship on the track. I needed to pay attention and set myself up for the upcoming corners. This one small change transformed the game for me. Too brutal, but much more preferable over too forgiving. After all, this is a game about avoiding being wiped out by the track or your opponents. Their arsenal consists of rockets, homing missiles, mines, and a disruptive shock. You can defend with a shield or leave them in the dust with a boost that more often than not sends you straight into a wall. To take slow corners, you need to use either your left or right air brake to slow down and slide into the corner at the same time, which is the primary way of taking corners in this franchise. The game's handling is weighty overall, requiring you to prepare for turns way in advance and heavily punishing you for incorrect timing. The camera in Wipeout is partially locked to the track, which improves the sense of speed and gives the game a unique feeling. While this can improve track visibility, it also gives you less information about your ship overall, because unlike traditional racing games, the vehicle isn't always centered, making its position harder to judge. There is no damage system, but the weapons do slow you down. You're granted a random one each time you drive over these crosspaths, with blue arrows giving you a speed boost, or send you straight into a wall on 3 separate corners in the game's iconic ice track. It has 5 hairpins that are much slower than what you're used to on other tracks, and a crucial high speed section that you have to nail after landing a jump. The tracks overall are well designed and diverse, with elevations adding a new level of depth in this 3D environment. Pitch control gives you extra finesse when taking and landing jumps, and if you go off track, the Grand Prix format is padded out. You can practice, but there's a huge lack of vehicle stats and a speedometer. And that's the first Wipeout. Barebone, but outright satisfying to play. The game nicely executed the anti-gravity racing concept in 3D and set a nice precedent for its upcoming sequel, Wipeout 2. We never got a Wipeout 2. We did, however, get a second Wipeout. The core game has remained identical, with the most notable addition being the energy bar, and also an energy drink plug that is shoved into your face in every loading screen. Energy drops from wall and weapon hits and can be recharged by driving over the pit lane on each track. The combat is further emphasized by the addition of new weapons. Plasma insta-kills your opponents, but it's harder to aim. There's a flashbang bomb and the autopilot that drives for you for a few seconds. A questionable power-up to have in a racing game. Still, it's nowhere near as bad as a quick power-up that slows down every opponent in front of you. If you get it, you press one button and it basically wins the race for you. Yeah, there's no way this Mario Kart garbage makes it into the future installments, right? There are now more opponents on the track, plus the addition of traffic cars, which make the races more populated and combat-centric, but also more fake. The races don't feel like races anymore. This is because the game artificially spreads out your opponents throughout the laps, so you're always in a pack and have someone to overtake. In a normal playthrough, you're always overtaking the first place at around the final lap, whereas at the beginning, they're virtually unbeatable. This rubber banding is extremely noticeable and hinders the overall racing experience. The driving is a more responsive version of the first game and the ships are quicker to grip up now. The new tracks feature more straights and low-speed corners, and thanks to the new collisions, can be cheesed by bouncing off the walls. But at least scraping them no longer brings you to a dead stop, and there's now a working speedometer with vehicle stats. You can even remap your controls, something that 30 years later is somehow not the standard in video games. Overall, the second Wipeout improved and expanded upon the gameplay, but also went back on some principles. It was a solid game and another commercial success, but it was just more Wipeout. And it would take 3 years until we got even more Wipeout. More ships, weapons, and new tracks. That's all. The game doesn't even have a main campaign structure. You can choose to do single races to unlock more ships and tracks, or do challenges that require you to meet a specific criteria, those being position, kills, or time. Thankfully, the traffic cars are gone and the rubber banding is slightly less noticeable. Aside from wall bouncing, the physics feel more consistent, and the more diverse tracks are better aligned with the game's handling. They also released an updated version with a few changes and tracks from the previous games. Wipeout 3 was the final entry in the original trilogy. It only refined and expanded upon the original formula and is Wipeout in its most evolved form, even though it didn't sell as much as its predecessor that for some reason was the most successful and well-received entry. The first game on the other hand offers Wipeouts in its purest, simplest form, and can even be played on a browser thanks to a source code leak. There is a Wipeout spin-off though. It looks like Wipeout but doesn't play like one. It has much snappier vehicles in an attempt to utilize analog controls, with tracks having more high-speed corners in general. Wipeout 64 is an acceptable game on its own, but it's not considered a real Wipeout, and doesn't have much to say against its competitor that was released later on the same console, which we're gonna take a look at in the next episode. If it's released, you can find it on the screen or in the description.